Marcus Wellington stood in the marble lobby of Wellington Tower, adjusting the navy blue doorman's cap on his head. At 62 years old, the billionaire real estate mogul had built an empire of luxury buildings across Manhattan, but none meant more to him than this one. This 40-story masterpiece was his first major project, the foundation of everything he'd achieved. Yet lately, he'd noticed something disturbing in the monthly reports. Tenant complaints were skyrocketing, maintenance requests were being ignored, and the building's reputation was crumbling. His property management team insisted everything was fine, but the numbers told a different story. So Marcus did what he always did when he needed the truth. He went undercover to see it for himself. Today, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just Mark, the new doorman, and he was about to discover secrets that would shake his empire to its core. The real doorman, Joseph, had called in sick that morning, giving Marcus the perfect opportunity. He'd arranged it all secretly with his head of security, making sure no one on the management team knew about his plan. The uniform fit surprisingly well, though Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd worn anything that wasn't custom-tailored. He positioned himself behind the ornate wooden desk near the entrance, familiarizing himself with the doorman's logbook and intercom system. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he watched the morning sun illuminate Fifth Avenue, casting golden light across the lobby's Italian marble floors. This building had cost him everything 30 years ago, nearly bankrupting him in the process. But it had been worth it, or at least it used to be. Now, he needed to find out what was really happening behind the polished facade. The first test of his disguise was about to walk through those doors. At exactly 7:15, a young woman burst through the entrance, her arms full of grocery bags and a laptop case sliding off her shoulder. She had paint stains on her jeans, and her dark curly hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Marcus recognized her immediately from the tenant files he'd studied last night. Sarah Chen, apartment 1847, a graphic designer who'd lived in the building for 3 years. She was also, according to the records, one of the most frequent complainers. But as Marcus watched her struggle with her bags, he saw something the paperwork hadn't captured. She had kind eyes, the sort that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. And there was an energy about her that seemed to light up the dreary morning. "Good morning," Marcus said, stepping forward. "Can I help you with those bags?" Sarah looked up, surprise crossing her features. "Oh, you're new. What happened to Joseph?" Her voice carried genuine concern, not the entitled tone Marcus had expected from a chronic complainer. "He's out sick today," Marcus replied, reaching for her grocery bags. "I'm Mark, filling in." She handed over the bags gratefully, and Marcus noticed her hands were stained with various colors of paint. "Thanks, Mark. I'm Sarah from the 18th floor. Nice to meet you." As they walked toward the elevator, Marcus observed everything with the trained eye of someone who'd built his fortune on details. The marble floor near the entrance had a crack he'd never noticed in photos. The brass mailbox panel was tarnished in several spots. Even the elevator button had a scratch across it. These weren't the signs of normal wear and tear. This was neglect. "So, Mark," Sarah said as they waited for the elevator, "how long have you been working in buildings?" Marcus had prepared his cover story carefully. "About 40 years off and on. Worked my way up from maintenance to doorman at various properties around the city." It wasn't entirely a lie. He had started in maintenance, just in his own buildings. "This is actually one of my favorite buildings in Manhattan," he added, curious to hear her response. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really? I mean, it's beautiful, sure. Classic architecture, great location, all of that." The elevator doors opened, but she didn't step inside. "But between you and me, Mark, the management here is absolutely terrible. I've been trying to get my shower fixed for 3 weeks. 3 weeks!" Her frustration was palpable, and Marcus felt his jaw tighten. 3 weeks for a basic repair? Marcus stepped into the elevator with her, his mind racing. 3 weeks seems excessive. What exactly is wrong with it? Sarah pressed the button for the 18th floor, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion. "The water pressure is basically non-existent, and it only runs cold. I've called the management office 17 times. 17! I've left voicemails, sent emails, even tried catching them in person." She shifted her laptop case, clearly agitated by the memory. "Every time, They promise someone will come look at it, but nobody ever shows up. And when I try to follow up, suddenly they can't find my work orders in the system. Marcus's hands clenched around the grocery bags. This wasn't just poor service, this was systematic negligence. That's unacceptable, he said quietly. Have you considered going over their heads? Contacting the building owner? Sarah snorted. The owner? Please. Marcus Wellington probably doesn't even know this building exists anymore. He owns half of Manhattan. The elevator climbed slowly, and Marcus counted each floor, using the time to process what he was hearing. You might be surprised, he said carefully. Sometimes owners care more than you'd think. Sarah gave him a sympathetic smile. You're sweet, Mark, but I've been around enough to know how this works. Billionaires like Wellington don't worry about individual tenants. We're just line items on a spreadsheet. She wasn't wrong about how many owners operated, Marcus thought. But she was wrong about him. At least he hoped she was. What about the other tenants? He asked. Are they having similar problems? The elevator dinged for the 18th floor, and Sarah's expression darkened. Oh, Mark, if you're going to work here, you should know. This building is falling apart, and nobody with the power to fix it seems to care. They walked down the hallway, and Marcus immediately noticed the worn carpet, the flickering overhead light, and a water stain on the ceiling that definitely hadn't been there 6 months ago. Sarah stopped at apartment 1847, fumbling for her keys. Mrs. Rodriguez, in 1823, has had a leak in her ceiling for 2 months. The Johnsons in 1856 have a broken air conditioning unit. The family in 1809 found mold growing behind their kitchen wall. She unlocked her door, and Marcus set her bags just inside. And that's just on this floor. I run a tenant support group, believe it or not. We meet every Wednesday in the community room, though half the time the management forgets to unlock it for us. Marcus filed away every detail, his anger growing with each revelation. A tenant support group? He asked. How many people are involved? Sarah leaned against her doorframe, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Started with 5 of us about a year ago. Now we're up to 43 residents across 15 floors. Sarah's voice carried a mix of pride and frustration. We've been documenting everything, keeping records of every ignored request, every missed repair appointment, every time management has lied to us. We even pooled money to hire a lawyer to review our leases. She paused, studying Marcus's face. Sorry, I'm probably overwhelming you on your first day. It's just that when Joseph's here, he already knows all of this. He's been fighting for us tenants for years, but management ignores him too. Marcus felt a surge of respect for Joseph, his regular doorman. At least someone in this building still cared. Don't apologize, Marcus said firmly. This is important. I want to know what's really going on here. Sarah smiled. A real smile this time. You know what, Mark? I think you're going to fit in just fine here. After Sarah disappeared into her apartment, Marcus stood in the hallway for a moment, absorbing everything. He pulled out a small notebook from his uniform pocket and began writing down every issue she'd mentioned. The shower with no hot water, Mrs. Rodriguez's ceiling leak, the broken AC unit, the mold, the tenant support group of 43 people. 43 residents who felt so ignored that they'd organized and hired a lawyer. This wasn't just a management problem. This was a complete system failure, and he was responsible. Marcus had hired the property management company, had trusted them to maintain his standards, had believed their glossy reports and reassuring emails. He'd been a fool. As he walked back toward the elevator, he examined every detail of the 18th floor. With new eyes. How many other problems had he been blind to? How many tenants were suffering while he sat in his penthouse office, completely oblivious? Today was just the beginning. He was going to find every answer, and then heads were going to roll. Marcus returned to the lobby, his mind churning with anger and determination. He'd built Wellington Tower with the vision that luxury wasn't just about marble floors and crystal chandeliers. It was about service, about making residents feel valued, about maintaining standards that justified the premium rent they paid. Yet here he was, discovering that vision had been corrupted from within. He settled back behind the doorman's desk and opened the building's maintenance logbook. What he found made his blood run cold. Page after page of repair requests, many dating back months, with the same notation repeated: forwarded to management, but there was no follow-up. No completion dates, no contractor signatures, just an endless cycle of forwarding and forgetting. Marcus recognized the handwriting as Joseph's, each entry meticulously dated and detailed. The doorman had been documenting this failure for months, maybe years. Why hadn't this reached Marcus's desk? Someone was burying these problems deliberately. The morning rush began in earnest, and Marcus forced himself to focus on his role. A businessman in an expensive suit breezed past without acknowledgement. Two women in yoga outfits chatted about their Pilates class, completely ignoring his greeting. An elderly man struggled with his walker, and Marcus quickly moved to hold the door. "Thank you, young man," the elderly resident said with a warm smile. "You're new here, aren't you?" Marcus helped him to a lobby chair. "Just filling in today, sir. I'm Mark." The man extended a weathered hand. "Leonard Hartman, apartment 2104. Lived here since this building opened 30 years ago. I remember when Marcus Wellington himself used to walk these halls, checking on every detail." Marcus shook his hand carefully, curious. "You met the owner?" Leonard's eyes grew distant with memory. "Oh yes, he was here almost every day during the first year." Leonard settled into the chair with a grateful sigh, and Marcus pulled up a seat beside him, sensing an opportunity. He cared about the little things Wellington did. He knew every tenant's name, asked about our families, made sure everything was perfect. The old man's voice carried both nostalgia and sadness. "I was one of the first residents. My wife and I moved in on opening day. She passed 5 years ago, but she always loved this building." Marcus felt a pang in his chest. He remembered the Hartmans, remembered helping them choose their apartment personally. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said quietly. Leonard waved a hand dismissively. "Life goes on. But I'll tell you, Mark, this building isn't what it used to be. If Wellington could see it now, he'd be heartbroken." Marcus leaned forward. "What's changed?" Leonard's expression hardened. "Everything. The staff doesn't care anymore. Management is impossible to reach. And the maintenance?" He shook his head bitterly. "My kitchen sink has been leaking for 6 weeks." Leonard continued, his frustration evident. "I'm 83 years old, Mark. I can't be climbing under sinks with a wrench, and I can't afford to hire my own plumber when I'm already paying $4,000 a month in rent." Marcus's jaw tightened. $4,000 a month, and this man couldn't get a basic leak fixed. 6 weeks is unacceptable," Marcus said. "Have you tried escalating the complaint?" Leonard laughed bitterly. "To who? The management company doesn't return calls. Wellington himself is probably on a yacht somewhere counting his money. The people at the top never care about the people at the bottom." The words stung because Marcus knew they reflected his own failure. He'd become exactly what Leonard described: distant, disconnected, blind to the reality his tenants faced. "What about the doorman, Joseph?" Marcus asked. "Does he try to help?" Leonard's face softened immediately. "Joseph is a saint. That man has spent his own money fixing small things around here," Leonard said, affection clear in his voice. "He replaced the light bulbs in my apartment when maintenance wouldn't. He helps Mrs. Chen carry her groceries every week. He even called a plumber friend to look at my sink, though the guy said he couldn't do the work without management approval." Marcus felt ashamed and inspired simultaneously. His doorman was a better man than many executives he knew. "Joseph sounds like he truly cares about the residents," Marcus observed. Leonard nodded emphatically. "He's the only one who does. But Mark, between you and me, I don't think he'll last much longer. I've heard rumors that management wants to replace him with someone younger, cheaper, someone who'll keep his mouth shut about the problems." Marcus's hands clenched. "They want to fire him?" Leonard leaned closer, lowering his voice. "That's what I've heard. He's been pushing back too hard, advocating for us tenants." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted near the elevators. A woman in her 40s was shouting at someone on her phone, her face flushed with anger. "I don't care what your schedule looks like. I have a child with asthma, and there's mold growing in her bedroom." Marcus excused himself from Leonard and approached the woman carefully. She was pacing in tight circles, her free hand gesturing wildly. 3 weeks you've been telling me someone will come. 3 weeks my daughter has been sleeping on the couch." Marcus waited for a pause in her conversation, then gently touched her elbow. She spun around, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. But Marcus shook his head. "Don't apologize," he said quietly. "Who are you talking to?" She pulled the phone away from her ear. "The useless property management company. Again. Marcus could hear a tinny voice on the other end, offering what sounded like scripted apologies. "Hang up!" Marcus said firmly. The woman looked startled. "What?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "Hang up the phone. They're not going to help you. Not like this." She hesitated, then ended the call. "I'm Mark, the doorman. Tell me about the mold." The woman, who introduced herself as Jennifer Park from apartment 2247, explained in a rush of words. Black mold had appeared on the wall behind her daughter's bed about 3 weeks ago. She'd called management immediately, sent photos, documented everything. They'd promised to send someone within 48 hours. Nobody came. She called again. More promises. More no-shows. "My daughter is 9 years old," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "She's been coughing constantly, wheezing at night. I can't afford to break my lease and move, but I can't keep her in that apartment either." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. This was beyond negligence. This was endangering a child. Marcus pulled out his phone, making a decision that would blow his cover but might save a child's health. "I know someone who can help. Someone who can get things done in this building." Jennifer looked skeptical. "I doubt a doorman knows anyone management will listen to." Marcus smiled grimly. "Trust me. What's your apartment number again?" As Jennifer repeated it, Marcus sent a text to his head of security. "Apartment 2247, black mold, child with asthma. I want a mold remediation team there within 2 hours. I don't care what it costs or who you have to call. Make it happen." He looked up to find Jennifer watching him with confusion. "I have some connections," Marcus explained vaguely. "Check your apartment around noon. Someone should be there." Jennifer's eyes widened. Who are you?" Marcus deflected. "Just someone who cares. Is your daughter at school right now?" Jennifer nodded slowly, still processing. "Yes, she'll be home at 3. "Good," Marcus said. "The work should be done by then. In fact, why don't you take the day off if you can? Go somewhere nice, away from the stress. Come back this evening." Jennifer stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "I don't understand. Doormen don't have this kind of pull." Marcus realized he'd almost overplayed his hand. "I used to work in property management myself," he improvised. "I still know people, contractors who owe me favors. Sometimes it's about knowing who to call directly instead of going through official channels." It was thin, but Jennifer was too desperate to question it deeply. She grabbed his hand. Thank you so much. I was at my wit's end." After she left, Marcus leaned against the doorman's desk, his heart pounding. He'd just bypassed his entire management system to help one tenant, but if that's what it took, he'd do it for every single resident in this building. His phone buzzed with a response from security. "Team dispatched. ETA 90 minutes. The morning continued with a steady stream of residents, and Marcus greeted each one with genuine attention. He was starting to see patterns in how people moved through the lobby. The wealthy residents on the upper floors rarely acknowledged him, treating him like furniture. The middle floors held a mix of young professionals and families who were polite but hurried. The lower floors, the older apartments with slightly lower rents, housed people who actually engaged with him as a human being. It was a depressing hierarchy made visible. Around 10:30, a man in his 50s wearing a cheap suit and carrying a clipboard entered the building. He had the air of someone who considered himself important, though his scuffed shoes and off-the-rack clothing suggested otherwise. "You're not Joseph," the man said, his tone accusatory. Marcus straightened. "Joseph's out sick. I'm filling in. Can I help you?" The man's eyes narrowed. "I'm Richard Brennan, property manager. Who authorized you to work here?" Marcus recognized the name immediately from his files. Richard Brennan was the on-site property manager, the man supposedly overseeing day-to-day operations. This was the person residents couldn't reach, the one who lost work orders. Standing face to face with him, Marcus felt his anger crystallize into cold focus. "The building management company sent me," Marcus said carefully. "Joseph called in sick, and they didn't want the desk unmanned." It was technically true. His head of security worked for the building's management division. Brennan's expression remained suspicious. "I wasn't notified. What's your name?" Marcus extended his hand. "Mark Sullivan. And you must be the property manager? Everyone's been trying to reach. The subtle jab landed. Brennan's face reddened slightly, but he shook Marcus's hand with a grip that was too firm, trying to establish dominance. "People know how to reach me if it's truly important," Brennan said dismissively. Marcus gestured to the maintenance logbook sitting open on the desk. "Interesting. I was just reviewing the repair requests. Seems like there are quite a few outstanding issues, some going back months." Brennan's eyes flickered to the logbook, and something like panic crossed his features before he masked it. "Joseph has no business showing that to temporary staff. Those are internal records." He moved to close the book, but Marcus had already memorized the most damning entries. "I'm just trying to understand the building operations," Marcus said mildly. "For instance, there's a tenant in 2247 with a serious mold problem. Has that been addressed?" Brennan's jaw tightened. "I don't discuss specific tenant issues with Doorman. That's confidential." Marcus felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. "Even when it involves a child's health?" Brennan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Listen, Mark, I don't know who you are or what you think you're doing, but this is my building to manage," Brennan continued, his face inches from Marcus's. "Doormen open doors and carry bags. They don't question management decisions. They don't review internal records. And they certainly don't involve themselves in tenant affairs." Marcus held his ground, studying the man who'd been failing his residents for months. Up close, Brennan had the look of someone who'd taken shortcuts his entire career. His tie was stained, his collar frayed, his fingernails dirty. This was not a man who took pride in his work. "I understand," Marcus said, though every word tasted like ash. "I was just trying to be helpful." Brennan smirked, satisfied he'd established control. "Helpful is staying in your lane. Now I need to inspect a few apartments. Make sure no packages get stolen while I'm upstairs." He walked toward the elevator, and Marcus watched him go with narrowed eyes. So that was Richard Brennan. The man was about to have a very bad day. As soon as Brennan disappeared into the elevator, Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the encrypted app that connected him directly to his executive team. He typed rapidly, "I need a complete audit of Wellington Towers property management. Every repair request for the past 2 years, every expense report, every communication between Brennan and our management company. I want it on my desk by tonight." Within seconds, a response came back. "Confirmed." "Should we alert Brennan?" Marcus typed. "Absolutely not. I want to see what he does when he thinks no one's watching." He pocketed his phone and took a deep breath. Through the lobby windows, he could see the lunch crowd starting to emerge on Fifth Avenue. In his real life, he'd be heading to a business lunch at some expensive restaurant right now. Instead, he was standing in a doorman's uniform, uncovering rot in his own organization, and he'd never felt more useful. A delivery truck pulled up outside, and Marcus went to help unload packages. The driver, a young man named Carlos, seemed surprised by the assistance. "Usually doormen just point where to stack them," Carlos said. "I don't mind helping," Marcus replied, grabbing several boxes. "You deliver here often?" Carlos nodded. 3-4 times a week. This building gets a lot of packages." As they worked, Marcus asked casual questions. What had Carlos noticed about the building? Did he ever interact with management? The delivery driver proved to be a wealth of information. "The old doorman Joseph, he's solid," Carlos said. "Always tips at Christmas, remembers my name, treats me like a person. But that property manager guy, total jerk. Yells at me if I'm in the lobby more than 5 minutes." Marcus filed that away. "What about the building itself?" Carlos glanced around before answering. "Between you and me, man, this place is going downhill. Used to be pristine, now there are always issues." They finished unloading, and Marcus signed for the packages. As Carlos drove away, Marcus organized the deliveries by floor, another task he assumed Joseph usually handled. The pile was substantial, at least 40 packages. He was sorting them when Sarah Chen came back through the lobby, looking more put together than earlier. She'd changed clothes and pulled her hair back neatly. "Mark, you're still here," she said with a smile. "Long shift today," Marcus replied. "Heading out?" Sarah nodded. "I have a client meeting, but I wanted to tell you something. I mentioned you to some of my neighbors, told them there's a new doorman who actually listens. Mrs. Rodriguez wants to talk to you about her ceiling leak." Marcus felt a weight settle on his shoulders. These people were looking to him for help, because everyone else had failed them. "I'd be happy to talk with her," he said. "When would be convenient?" Sarah checked her phone. "She's home now if you have a minute." Marcus looked at the lobby. It was temporarily quiet, and he could lock the door briefly. "Let me come up now," he decided. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Really? You'd do that?" Marcus gathered a notepad and pen. "If Mrs. Rodriguez's ceiling is leaking, someone needs to document it properly. Clearly, the property manager isn't doing his job." They took the elevator to the 18th floor, and Sarah led him to apartment 1823. She knocked, calling out in a warm voice. The door opened to reveal a tiny woman in her 70s with silver hair and bright, intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Mark, the new doorman. He wants to hear about your leak." Mrs. Rodriguez ushered them inside, speaking rapidly. "Finally, someone who cares. Come, I'll show you." The apartment was immaculately kept, filled with family photos and the smell of fresh coffee. But when Mrs. Rodriguez led them to the bedroom, Marcus's heart sank. The ceiling had a massive water stain, at least 3 feet wide. "It started small 2 months ago," Mrs. Rodriguez explained, pointing upward. "Just a little discoloration. I called management immediately. They said they'd send someone." Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd fought bureaucracy and lost. "The stain got bigger. I called again, more promises. Then last week water started actually dripping. I had to put a bucket here." She indicated a plastic container on the floor beneath the stain. "At night, I can't sleep because of the dripping sound. Plink, 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 all night long." Marcus took photos with his phone, documenting everything. He could see the edges of the stain were darkening, which likely meant mold was beginning to grow. "Has anyone from management actually come to look at this?" he asked. Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head bitterly. "Not once. I'm 81 years old. I've lived in New York my entire life. I've never been treated this poorly by any landlord." Sarah stood with her arms crossed, clearly having seen the damage before. "This is what we're dealing with, Mark. Systematic neglect. Mrs. Rodriguez is on a fixed income. She can't just move." Marcus knelt down to examine the water damage more closely. The drywall was soft to the touch, compromised. The leak was coming from the apartment directly above. "Mrs. Rodriguez, who lives in the apartment above you?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "A young couple. The Hendersons, I think. I've tried knocking on their door to see if they have plumbing issues, but they're never home." Marcus made notes. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make sure someone addresses this immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today." Mrs. Rodriguez looked at him with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "How can a doorman do what property management won't?" Marcus met her eyes. "Because I know who to call, and I'm not going to take no for an answer." Back in the elevator, Sarah studied Marcus with open curiosity. "You're not a normal doorman, are you?" Marcus kept his expression neutral. "What makes you say that?" Sarah laughed. "Normal doormen don't promise immediate repairs. They don't take detailed notes and photos. They don't have the confidence you have." The elevator descended slowly. "Let's just say I've been in this business long enough to know how things should work," Marcus said carefully. "And I have zero patience for incompetence." Sarah smiled. "Well, whatever your story is, Mark, I'm glad you're here. These people need an advocate." The elevator doors opened to the lobby and Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his security chief. "Mold team at 2247. Remediation in progress. Discovered the source. You're going to want to see the report." Marcus looked at Sarah. "I need to make some calls, but I promise you, things are about to change in this building." He had no idea how right he was. The real storm was just beginning. Marcus stepped outside the building to make his calls in private. The crisp autumn air helped clear his head as he dialed his security chief. "Talk to me about apartment 2247, he said without preamble. The response made his blood boil. "Boss, the mold situation is worse than reported. The entire wall behind the bed is compromised. Our team found the source, a slow leak from a bathroom pipe in the apartment above. It's been leaking for months, maybe longer." Marcus closed his eyes, fighting to control his rage. "Months? A child has been breathing toxic mold for months because no one bothered to investigate properly." His security chief continued grimly. "There's more. The leak should have been obvious if anyone had done a proper inspection. The tenant upstairs reported water pooling in their bathroom 3 months ago. It's in the maintenance logs." Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. "Let me guess. Forwarded to management, never addressed." The confirmation came swiftly. Exactly. We're pulling all related records now. How long until the apartment is safe? Marcus asked, watching taxis stream past on Fifth Avenue. The team is removing all contaminated drywall now. They'll treat the area, install moisture barriers, and rebuild. If they work through the night, the apartment should be habitable by tomorrow evening. Marcus made a decision. Put the family in a hotel tonight. The Peninsula, suite with 2 bedrooms. Bill it to my personal account, not the building. There was a pause. Sir, that's going to raise questions. The mother already seemed suspicious about how quickly we responded. Marcus smiled grimly. Tell her it's standard protocol when mold remediation requires overnight work. Tell her the building owner mandates it, which, as of right now, I do. He could hear typing on the other end. Done. I'll have someone contact Mrs. Park within the hour. Anything else? Marcus thought about Mrs. Rodriguez's dripping ceiling. Yes, I'm sending you photos of another leak situation. I want it fixed today. Marcus spent the next 20 minutes forwarding photos and details to his team, bypassing every official channel. Each repair he ordered was a band-aid on a hemorrhaging wound, but these people had waited long enough. He was finishing his 5th call when a voice interrupted him. Talking to yourself, Doorman? Marcus turned to find Richard Brennan standing in the building's entrance, smoking a cigarette. The property manager's smirk was infuriating. Just coordinating some deliveries, Marcus lied smoothly. I wasn't aware Doorman had such important phone calls, Brennan said, flicking ash onto the pristine sidewalk Marcus had watched Joseph sweep every morning. Times are changing, Marcus replied evenly. Brennan took a long drag, studying him. You know what I think? I think you're too interested in things that don't concern you. Too many questions, too much initiative. He dropped the cigarette and ground it under his heel. That's not what we need in this building. Marcus felt his carefully maintained cover slipping. Every instinct screamed at him to reveal who he was, to fire this incompetent parasite on the spot. But he held back. He needed to see how deep the corruption ran. I'm just trying to do a good job, Marcus said mildly. Brennan stepped closer, his coffee breath washing over Marcus's face. Here's the thing, Mark. I've been managing this building for 5 years. I know how things work. The owner doesn't care what happens here as long as the rent check's clear. The management company doesn't care as long as I file reports. And the tenants? He laughed. They can complain all they want. Their leases lock them in. Where are they going to go? Marcus's hands clenched at his sides. So you just ignore them? Brennan shrugged. I prioritize efficiently. The wealthy tenants on the upper floors get immediate attention. They're the ones who might actually cause trouble. The rest? They'll deal with it or move out eventually. That's your management philosophy? Marcus asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Ignore problems until people give up? Brennan seemed to miss the danger in Marcus's tone. It's called resource allocation. I have a limited maintenance budget. Why waste it on people who'll accept substandard service? He pulled out another cigarette. Besides, repairs cut into my annual bonus. The less I spend, the more I make. Simple economics. Marcus felt something crystallize inside him. This wasn't just negligence. It was calculated exploitation. What about the mold situation in 2247, he pressed. That's affecting a child's health. Brennan's expression darkened. How do you know about that? Marcus kept his voice steady. The mother was in the lobby this morning, upset. Hard not to overhear. Brennan waved dismissively. She's exaggerating. People always exaggerate. I'll get to it eventually. Marcus imagined the remediation team currently tearing apart the wall. Eventually might be too late. Brennan's eyes narrowed dangerously. You're really starting to annoy me, Mark. Maybe this temporary position should be very temporary. Before Marcus could respond, a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb. A woman in an expensive business suit emerged, her heels clicking authoritatively on the sidewalk. Marcus recognized her immediately. Diana Chen, the regional director of the property management company that oversaw all his buildings. She was, technically, Brennan's boss, and she had no idea Marcus Wellington was standing 3 feet away in a doorman's uniform. Mr. Brennan, Diana said crisply, I need to speak with you immediately. Brennan's cocky demeanor evaporated. Ms. Chen, I wasn't expecting you today. Diana's expression was glacial. Clearly, inside. Now, she swept past both of them into the lobby, and Brennan hurried after her like a scolded child. Marcus followed at a discreet distance, intensely curious about this unexpected development. Diana positioned herself in the center of the lobby, her designer bag tucked under one arm, her posture radiating authority. "Mr. Brennan, I've received several concerning reports about this property. I'm here to conduct a surprise inspection." Brennan's face had gone pale. "Reports? From whom?" Diana pulled out a tablet. "That's confidential. However, I can tell you the complaints involve delayed maintenance, unreturned calls, and violations of our service standards. I'll be inspecting the building top to bottom and reviewing your records." Marcus stayed behind the doorman's desk, trying to appear invisible while absorbing every word. He hadn't ordered this inspection. Someone else was investigating. "I assure you, everything is in order," Brennan stammered. "Our maintenance logs are up to date." Diana's smile was sharp. "Then you won't mind showing them to me, along with your expense reports, contractor invoices, and resident communication logs." Brennan's eyes flickered toward the maintenance logbook on Marcus's desk, panic evident in his features. "Of course," Brennan said, his voice strained. "Everything is in my office. If you'll follow me." Diana held up a hand. "First, I'd like to speak with the doorman. They often have the most accurate picture of daily operations." She turned to Marcus, her expression softening slightly. "You are?" Marcus straightened. "Mark Sullivan, ma'am. I'm filling in for Joseph today." Diana approached the desk. "Perfect. An outside perspective. Tell me, Mark, in your experience working in various buildings, how would you rate the maintenance responsiveness here?" It was a loaded question, and Marcus saw Brennan's face darken with warning. Marcus made a split-second decision. "Honestly, ma'am, it's the worst I've ever seen." Brennan made a strangled sound. "He's been here one day. He doesn't know." Diana silenced him with a look. "Continue, Mark." Marcus gestured to the maintenance logbook. "This tells the story. Months of unresolved repair requests, residents going weeks without basic services." Diana picked up the logbook, her expression growing darker with each page she flipped. "This is appalling. Mr. Brennan, these entries indicate systematic failure to address resident needs." Brennan's desperation was palpable. "Those are exaggerated. Joseph, the regular doorman, he has it out for me. He writes things down to make me look bad." Marcus couldn't stay silent. "I've met several residents this morning. A woman with a child suffering from mold exposure. An elderly man with a 6-week-old sink leak. Another woman with no hot water for 3 weeks. These aren't exaggerations." Diana's eyes locked onto Marcus with laser focus. "You documented these issues?" Marcus pulled out his notepad. "Names, apartment numbers, dates, and descriptions. Would you like to see?" Diana extended her hand, and Marcus passed over his notes. As she read, her jaw tightened. "Mr. Brennan, can you explain why apartment 2247 has had a mold issue for 3 weeks without remediation?" Brennan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Because," Diana continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous level, "mold affecting a child's health is exactly the kind of liability that could cost this company millions in lawsuits. Not to mention the moral bankruptcy of ignoring it." Brennan found his voice. "I was waiting for the resident to provide documentation from a doctor proving the mold was causing health issues. We have to protect ourselves from fraudulent claims." Marcus felt disgust wash over him. Diana's expression suggested she felt the same. "That's not our protocol, and you know it. Any mold report triggers immediate investigation and remediation. That's been company policy for 3 years." She turned to Marcus. "Has anyone addressed the mold situation today?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I believe a remediation team arrived this morning. I saw them entering the building around 11. It was true, even if he'd been the one who ordered it." Diana's eyebrows rose. "You saw a remediation team? Mr. Brennan, did you finally do your job?" Brennan looked completely confused, which confirmed Marcus's suspicion. The property manager had no idea his authority had been circumvented. Brennan stammered, Yes, my assistant must have arranged it." The lie was transparent, and Diana clearly didn't believe him. "Your assistant? The one you told me you didn't have budget to hire?" Diana's voice dripped with sarcasm. She turned back to Marcus. "Mark, I'd like you to show me around the building. Point out any issues you've noticed." Brennan looked like he might have a stroke. "Ms. Chen, surely you'd prefer someone who actually works here permanently to—" Diana cut him off. with a glacial stare. "Mr. Brennan, you are suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. Please surrender your keys and access cards." The lobby went silent. Marcus watched as the color drained from Brennan's face. "Suspended? You can't do that. I have rights. I have a contract." Diana's expression didn't waver. "Your contract includes a clause about maintaining service standards. Based on what I've seen in just 10 minutes, you violated that clause repeatedly." Brennan's shock turned to rage. "This is because of him." He pointed at Marcus. "He's been stirring up trouble since the moment he got here, poisoning people against me." Diana remained unmoved. "He's been here for a few hours and already documented more problems than you've addressed in months. That should tell you everything you need to know." Brennan turned to Marcus, his face twisted with fury. "Who are you, really? No Doorman acts like this. No Doorman has the connections you have." Marcus met his gaze steadily, tempted to reveal everything, but Diana intervened. "It doesn't matter who he is. Your failures speak for themselves. Now, keys and access cards. Security will escort you from the building." As if on cue, 2 security guards Marcus recognized from his corporate team appeared in the lobby. Brennan's hands shook as he fumbled with his keyring, removing building keys. He slapped them on the desk in front of Marcus. "This isn't over." The security guards escorted a fuming Brennan out of the building, leaving Marcus alone with Diana Chen. She watched through the windows until Brennan was out of sight, then turned to Marcus with an appraising look. "All right, Mark Sullivan, or whoever you really are. Start talking." Marcus felt his cover crumbling, but maintained his composure. "I'm not sure what you mean." Diana laughed without humor. "Please. I've been in property management for 20 years. I know when something doesn't add up. You show up out of nowhere, immediately document serious issues, somehow arrange for a mold remediation team without going through official channels, and carry yourself with more authority than any doorman I've ever met." She crossed her arms. "So who sent you? Are you a corporate investigator? A lawyer building a case? Or are you working for the tenants?" Marcus considered his options. Diana Chen had a reputation for competence and integrity. She might be exactly the kind of ally he needed, but revealing his identity would end his investigation prematurely. "Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing this building run properly," Marcus said carefully. Diana studied him for a long moment. "Fair enough. Keep your secrets, but I want your help." She pulled out her tablet. "I'm conducting a full audit of this property. Every apartment, every system, every corner. If you're willing to assist, I could use someone who actually seems to care about the residents." Marcus nodded. "I can do that." Diana's expression softened slightly. "Good, because between you and me, I've suspected problems here for months, but Brennan was good at hiding them in paperwork. He'd file reports that looked acceptable on the surface, enough to pass corporate review." She gestured around the pristine lobby. "Everything looks beautiful where people can see it, but I'm betting the reality behind closed doors is very different." Marcus thought about Mrs. Rodriguez's dripping ceiling, Sarah's cold shower, the mold in little Emily Park's bedroom. "You have no idea how right you are." They spent the next hour touring the building together, and each floor revealed new horrors. On the 19th floor, they found a fire exit door that wouldn't open, a critical safety violation. The 23rd floor had a hallway light that had been broken for so long, residents had taped a flashlight to the wall. In the basement, they discovered the laundry room had 3 broken machines that had been out of order for over 2 months. Diana photographed everything, her professionalism barely masking her growing outrage. "This is unconscionable," she muttered, documenting water damage in a storage area. "Wellington Tower was supposed to be our flagship property. We charge premium rents here. This is..." She struggled for words. Marcus supplied them. "A betrayal of trust. These people pay good money expecting a certain standard of living. Instead, they're being exploited." Diana looked at him sharply. "You sound like you take this personally." Marcus met her eyes. "I believe people deserve what they pay for. Call me old-fashioned." They returned to the lobby around 2 in the afternoon, both exhausted and disturbed by what they'd found. Diana immediately began making calls, ordering emergency repairs and summoning contractors. Marcus watched her work with approval. This was what management should look like. decisive, accountable, responsive. As Diana argued with a contractor about response times, Sarah Chen returned to the building. She stopped short when she saw Diana, clearly recognizing authority when she saw it. "Excuse me," Sarah said hesitantly. "Is something happening? We saw the property manager being escorted out earlier." Diana ended her call and approached Sarah with a professional smile. "I'm Diana Chen, Regional Director of Property Management. We're conducting an audit and addressing maintenance issues. Can I ask your name and apartment number?" Sarah introduced herself, and Diana's eyes lit with recognition. "Apartment 1847. You're one of the residents who filed multiple complaints about your shower." Sarah nodded warily. "For 3 weeks. No one's done anything." Diana pulled up her tablet, scrolling through records. "According to our system, your work orders were all marked as completed." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Completed? My shower still has no hot water and barely any pressure." Diana's jaw tightened. "Mr. Brennan falsified the records. I'm looking at invoices for work that was never done." She looked up at Sarah. "I owe you an apology. This should never have happened. I'm ordering an emergency plumber to your apartment today." Sarah looked stunned. "Today? Really?" Diana nodded firmly. "Within 3 hours. Mark, can you make sure Mrs. Chen gets my direct number? If the plumber doesn't show up exactly as promised, I want to know immediately." Marcus wrote down Diana's contact information and handed it to Sarah, who looked like she might cry. "I can't believe this is actually happening. We've been fighting for so long." Diana's expression was grim. "How many other residents are having similar experiences?" Sarah glanced at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod. "There's a tenant support group. We have 43 members across multiple floors. We've been documenting everything because no one would listen to us." Diana's eyes widened. 43 residents organized against management? Why wasn't I informed? Sarah's voice carried years of frustration. "We tried contacting your office. We sent emails, made calls, even sent a certified letter. We never got a response." Diana looked horrified. "When was this?" Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails. "First contact was 7 months ago. Most recent was 2 weeks ago." She held up her phone, showing a long chain of unanswered messages. Diana photographed the screen. "This is evidence of systematic failure at multiple levels. Sarah, I need you to contact your tenant group. I want to meet with all of them. Tonight, if possible." Sarah's eyes went wide. "You want to meet with us? All of us?" Diana nodded. "I need to hear directly from residents about their experiences." Sarah immediately began texting. "We usually meet Wednesday nights, but I can get people together on short notice. The community room." Diana made a note. 7 o'clock tonight, community room. "And Sarah, bring all your documentation. Every ignored complaint, every false promise, everything." Sarah nodded eagerly and rushed off to spread the word. Diana turned to Marcus. "This is worse than I thought. A tenant uprising doesn't happen overnight. This has been building for months, maybe years." Marcus leaned against the doorman's desk. "The question is how much of this Brennan was doing on his own, and how much was enabled by the system." Diana's expression turned cold. "That's exactly what I intend to find out, and when I do, heads are going to roll." Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. Diana Chen was proving to be exactly what this building needed. But he knew the problems went deeper than one corrupt property manager. His own distance from operations had allowed this to fester. He was as much to blame as anyone. The afternoon brought a steady parade of contractors, each summoned by Diana's increasingly forceful phone calls. Marcus directed them to various apartments, acting as a liaison between Diana and the residents. By 5 o'clock, Mrs. Rodriguez's ceiling leak was being repaired. The Hendersons' plumbing above her was being replaced, and Sarah's shower was fully functional with hot water and proper pressure. Each repair felt like a small victory, but Marcus knew they were still just scratching the surface. As the contractors worked, residents began gathering in small groups, whispering excitedly. Word was spreading about the suspended property manager and the regional director taking charge. Marcus overheard fragments of conversations, hope mixed with skepticism, relief mixed with suspicion that it wouldn't last. Around 6:30, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from his executive assistant. "The audit is complete. You need to see this immediately." Marcus stepped outside to call. "Tell me." The response made his blood run cold. "It's not just Wellington Tower. We found evidence of similar issues across 6 properties. Marcus felt the weight of that revelation settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. 6 properties. How many residents were suffering across his empire because he'd been too distant, too trusting? "Send me everything," he said quietly. "Every detail. I want names of every property manager, every falsified report, every ignored complaint." His assistant's voice was grim. "Sir, the financial implications alone are staggering. Brennan was billing for repairs that were never done and pocketing the difference. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars across multiple properties." Marcus closed his eyes. "Get the legal team ready and start preparing termination paperwork for everyone involved. I don't care about the cost. I want this fixed." He ended the call and stood on the sidewalk, watching the evening crowds pass by. These people trusted him with their homes, their safety, their families. And he'd failed them. The Doorman uniform suddenly felt appropriate. He'd been playing at being a mogul while the foundation of his empire rotted from within. Marcus returned to the lobby to find it transformed into a hub of activity. Residents were streaming toward the community room, many clutching folders and binders. He recognized faces from throughout the day. Leonard Hartman with his walker, Jennifer Park holding her daughter's hand, Sarah Chen carrying a laptop. Diana stood near the community room entrance, greeting each resident personally. Marcus approached her. "Looks like you're getting a good turnout." Diana nodded, her expression serious. 52 residents so far. This is bigger than I anticipated." She glanced at Marcus. "I'd like you in this meeting. You've earned their trust in one day, which is more than the management company achieved in years." Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure? I'm just a doorman." Diana gave him a knowing look. "You and I both know that's not true. But whoever you really are, these people respond to you. I need that in the room." Marcus agreed, and they entered the community room together. The community room was packed. Every chair was filled, with more residents standing along the walls. Marcus did a quick count. At least 60 people, representing every demographic and floor of the building. The energy in the room was electric, charged with hope and anger in equal measure. Diana positioned herself at the front, and Marcus stood off to the side, trying to remain unobtrusive. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Diana began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "I'm Diana Chen, Regional Director of the Property Management Company. I'm here because this building has failed you, and I want to understand how and why." A man in his 30s raised his hand. "With all due respect, we've heard promises before. Why should we believe anything will change?" Diana didn't flinch from the challenge. "Because as of today, Richard Brennan has been suspended. Because I've spent the day documenting violations, and because you deserve accountability." For the next hour, Marcus listened as residents shared their stories. A single mother whose heat hadn't worked all last winter. An elderly couple dealing with a cockroach infestation that management claimed didn't exist. A young professional who'd been without a working stove for 5 weeks. Each story was worse than the last, painting a picture of systematic neglect that made Marcus physically ill. Sarah Chen stood and presented a spreadsheet she'd created, documenting every complaint from the Tenant group members. "We have 317 unresolved issues across 60 apartments," she explained, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "The average wait time for any response is 42 days. The average resolution time for the few issues that actually get resolved is 93 days. Diana studied the spreadsheet on Sarah's laptop, her expression growing darker. "This is beyond unacceptable. This is criminal negligence." She looked up at the assembled residents. "I need copies of everything you have." Leonard Hartman struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his walker. "Ms. Chen, I appreciate that you're here. I do. But we've learned not to trust people in suits making promises." His voice carried the weight of disappointment. "We've been lied to, ignored and dismissed. Some of us have lived here for decades, since this building opened. We remember when Marcus Wellington himself walked these halls, when every detail mattered, when residents were treated with respect." Marcus felt those words like a knife to his heart. "Now we're just income streams," Leonard continued. Tenants to be milked for rent while the building crumbles around us. So forgive me if I'm skeptical that anything will really change." The room erupted in agreement, and Diana waited for the noise to settle. "Mr. Hartman, you're right to be skeptical. Words are cheap, so let me tell you what's already happened today." She pulled out her tablet and began reading. Apartment 2247. Mold remediation completed. Diana continued down her list. Apartment 1847. Plumbing repaired. Apartment 1823, ceiling leak fixed. 19th floor fire exit door repaired and certified. Basement laundry room machines replaced. With each item, the room grew quieter. Residents exchanged glances, surprise evident on their faces. "These repairs happened today," Diana emphasized, "within hours of my arrival, because they should have happened weeks or months ago." Jennifer Park stood up, her daughter beside her. "I'm the resident from 2247. My daughter Emily has severe asthma. We've been living in a hotel tonight because the repairs were so extensive. But for the first time in weeks, Emily isn't coughing." Her voice broke. Someone finally cared enough to actually do something. Emily, a small girl with big eyes, waved shyly at the room. Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. That child had suffered because of his negligence. Diana nodded to Jennifer. "That's what should have happened immediately when you first reported the problem." Sarah stood again, her expression thoughtful. "Ms. Chen, we appreciate what you've done today. We really do. But here's our question. Where were you for the past year? Why did it take this crisis for someone from corporate to actually show up?" It was a fair question, and Marcus watched Diana carefully. She didn't deflect or make excuses. "That's a question I've been asking myself all day," Diana admitted. "The truth is, our system failed. Reports were falsified. Communications were intercepted or ignored. Brennan and possibly others worked to keep problems from reaching people who could fix them." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But that's not good enough. I should have been more vigilant. I should have conducted surprise inspections. I should have listened when warning signs appeared." The room appreciated her honesty. Marcus could see it in their faces. "Going forward," Diana continued, "I'm implementing new protocols, monthly inspections, direct hotlines to corporate, anonymous complaint systems that bypass property management entirely." A woman in her 50s raised her hand. "What about compensation? We've been paying premium rent for substandard living conditions. Some of us have medical bills from mold exposure, hotel costs, repairs we paid for ourselves." Diana nodded. "That's being addressed. We're conducting a comprehensive review of every affected apartment. Residents will receive rent credits for periods when basic services weren't provided. We'll reimburse documented expenses for repairs you shouldn't have had to pay for. And in cases of health impacts, our insurance will work with you directly." Marcus made a mental note to ensure those compensations came from his personal accounts, not just insurance. These people deserved more than the minimum. "What about our leases?" another resident asked. "Some of us want to leave." "Will we be penalized?" Diana shook her head. "Anyone who wants to terminate their lease early due to these failures can do so without penalty. We'll provide assistance with moving costs and positive references for new landlords." The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, with Diana patiently answering every question and noting every concern. Marcus watched the residents' body language shift from defensive to cautiously hopeful. This was what leadership looked like: present, accountable, human. Finally, Sarah stood one last time. "Ms. Chen, there's one more thing we need to address. Joseph, our regular doorman, has been the only person in this building who consistently fought for us. He documented problems when management ignored them. He helped residents with his own time and money. We've heard rumors that management wanted to fire him for causing trouble." The room murmured in agreement, and Marcus's attention sharpened. Diana looked surprised. "I wasn't aware of any plan to terminate Joseph, but given what I've learned today, his so-called troublemaking was actually doing his job correctly." She made a note. "Joseph is not only safe, he's going to receive a formal commendation and a raise." The residents broke into spontaneous applause, and Marcus found himself clapping too. Joseph deserved that and more. As the meeting wound down, residents began approaching Diana individually with specific issues. Marcus helped organize the line, making sure everyone got their chance to speak. Leonard Hartman paused beside Marcus on his way out. "That new doorman, Mark. he said quietly. "He did this, didn't he? He's the one who brought Ms. Chen here." Marcus started to deflect, but Leonard smiled knowingly. "I've been around a long time, son. I recognize someone who knows how to pull strings. Whoever you really are, thank you." He patted Marcus's arm and shuffled away before Marcus could respond. As the community room slowly emptied, Sarah approached Marcus and Diana. "This feels like a turning point," she said cautiously, "but we need to make sure it lasts. That things don't just slide back once you leave, Miss Chen." Diana looked at Marcus, then back at Sarah. "I'm not leaving. I'm personally overseeing this building's management until I'm confident it's running properly." By 9 o'clock, the building had quieted. Diana sat in the community room, reviewing notes while Marcus helped clean up chairs. The day felt like it had lasted a week, and Marcus's feet ached in Joseph's borrowed shoes. "You're still here," Diana observed, looking up from her tablet. "Most temporary workers would have clocked out hours ago." Marcus stacked the last chair. "This feels unfinished." Diana studied him with those sharp, analytical eyes. "You know what I think, Mark? I think you have a personal connection to this building. Maybe you used to live here, or someone you care about does. That's the only explanation for your level of investment." She wasn't wrong exactly. Marcus did have a personal connection. He'd poured his soul into building Wellington Tower. "Something like that," he admitted. Diana nodded slowly. "Well, whoever you are, you helped save this building today. These residents were on the verge of a lawsuit, maybe even a rent strike. You gave them hope." Marcus's phone buzzed with another text from his executive team. The full scope of the corruption was even worse than initially reported. Brennan had been part of a network of property managers across multiple buildings, all systematically defrauding the company and neglecting residents. "Everything all right?" Diana asked, noticing his expression. Marcus pocketed his phone. "Just processing a long day." Diana closed her tablet and stood, stretching. "I need to ask you something. What you did today, arranging those repairs so quickly, that required serious connections. Doormen don't have that kind of pull." Marcus felt the moment approaching when his cover would collapse entirely. "What if I told you I know Marcus Wellington personally?" Diana's eyebrows rose. "The owner? You know him?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "Let's say I have his ear. And after today, he's going to make some major changes." Diana's expression shifted to something between hope and skepticism. "If you really have access to Wellington, tell him this." Diana moved closer, her voice intense. "Tell him that his buildings are failing because he's too distant. Property management companies are treating his properties like ATMs, extracting maximum profit while providing minimum service. His reputation, everything he built, it's crumbling because he's not paying attention." Every word landed like a blow, but Marcus didn't interrupt. "Wellington Tower was supposed to represent something," Diana continued. "Excellence, integrity, luxury with substance. Now it's just another overpriced building where residents are exploited. If Marcus Wellington actually cares about his legacy, he needs to get involved again. Not through layers of management, but directly." Marcus felt the truth of her words resonate through him. "I'll make sure he gets that message," he said quietly. "In fact, I guarantee he's already heard it." Diana nodded, satisfied. "Good, because people like Leonard Hartman, they remember when Wellington cared. That memory is the only reason some of them haven't left already." She gathered her things. "I'll be here tomorrow morning at 8. After Diana left, Marcus stood alone in the empty community room. The walls were covered with photos from building events over the years, holiday parties, summer barbecues, community celebrations. He studied them, seeing the faces of residents he'd long forgotten. In the older photos, he could see himself, younger and more idealistic, always in the center of things. When had he stopped showing up? When had his buildings become just numbers on a spreadsheet? His phone rang. It was his head of security. "Sir, Joseph is asking questions. He heard about Brennan's suspension and wants to know what's happening. What should I tell him?" Marcus checked his watch. 9:15. "Where is Joseph now?" The response came quickly. "At home. He's actually feeling better and wants to come in tomorrow." Marcus made a decision. "Send me his address. I'm going to visit him personally." There was a pause. "Sir, are you sure that's wise? You're still undercover." Marcus looked down at the doorman uniform. "Not for much longer. Joseph deserves to hear the truth from me." 30 minutes later, Marcus stood outside a modest apartment building in Queens. Joseph lived on the third floor of a pre-war building that had seen better days. Marcus climbed the stairs, his nervous energy building. What would he say to the man who'd been fighting battles Marcus should have been fighting himself? He knocked, and after a moment the door opened. Joseph looked exactly like his employee photo. Mid-50s, kind eyes, the weathered face of someone who'd worked hard his entire life. He wore a comfortable sweater and held a cup of tea. "Can I help you?" Joseph asked. Puzzled, Marcus took a breath. "Joseph, my name is Mark. I filled in for you at Wellington Tower today." Recognition flashed across Joseph's face. "Oh, yes, the building manager mentioned someone would cover. Are you here about tomorrow? I can work. I'm feeling much better." Marcus shook his head. "Can I come in? We need to talk." Joseph's confusion deepened, but he stepped aside. Of course. Joseph's apartment was small but immaculate, filled with family photos and well-worn furniture. Marcus saw pictures of Joseph with residents from Wellington Tower, candid shots at building events. "Can I get you something? Coffee, tea?" Joseph offered. "I'm fine, thank you," Marcus said, sitting when Joseph gestured to the couch. "Joseph, I need to be honest with you. I'm not just a doorman filling in." Joseph sat across from him, curiosity evident. "I suspected you weren't typical when they told me about today. Ms. Chen conducting a surprise audit, Brennan getting suspended, multiple repairs happening simultaneously." He sipped his tea. "That doesn't happen because of a substitute doorman." Marcus leaned forward. "What I'm about to tell you needs to stay confidential, at least for another day or two." Joseph nodded slowly. Marcus took off the doorman cap he'd been wearing all day. "My name isn't Mark Sullivan. It's Marcus Wellington. I own the building." The teacup froze halfway to Joseph's lips. For several seconds, neither man moved. Joseph set down his cup with shaking hands. "You're Marcus Wellington." "The Marcus Wellington." Marcus nodded. "I came in undercover because the numbers weren't adding up. Complaints were up, but property management kept saying everything was fine. I needed to see the truth for myself." Joseph's expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and then something that looked like vindication. "So you saw it. You saw what's been happening." Marcus met his eyes. "I saw everything. The neglect, the corruption, the suffering. And I saw your logs, Joseph. Months of documentation that no one was paying attention to." Joseph's voice turned bitter. "I sent reports to management every week. I called Ms. Chen's office a dozen times. I thought maybe if I made enough noise, someone would care." He laughed without humor. "I never imagined the owner himself would show up in a doorman uniform." Marcus felt shame wash over him. "You shouldn't have had to fight alone. I should have known. I should have been paying attention." Joseph stood and walked to his window, looking out at the Queen's skyline. "Do you know what it's like, Mr. Wellington, watching a building you love deteriorate? Seeing residents you care about suffer while the people in charge do nothing." His voice carried years of frustration. "I'm a doorman. I open doors and carry bags, but those people became my family. Mrs. Rodriguez reminds me of my mother. Leonard Hartman taught my son chess. Sarah Chen designed my daughter's wedding invitations for free." He turned back to Marcus. "When they hurt, I hurt, but I couldn't fix it. I didn't have the power." Marcus stood too. "You had more power than you knew. Your documentation is what's bringing down Brennan and the others. Your advocacy kept residents from giving up entirely. You did more than most executives I know." Joseph's eyes glistened. "Brennan told me last week I was going to be fired, said I caused too many problems, that I needed to learn to keep my mouth shut." Marcus felt anger surge again. "You're not fired. You're getting a raise and a commendation. Diana Chen announced it at the Tenant meeting tonight." Joseph looked stunned. "A raise? But Brennan said—" Marcus interrupted. "Brennan is suspended pending criminal investigation. He's never stepping foot in Wellington Tower again." He pulled out his phone and showed Joseph the audit results. He was part of a fraud network spanning multiple properties, billing for repairs that never happened, pocketing the difference, falsifying reports. Joseph scanned the documents, his expression darkening. "How much?" Marcus's voice was grim. "Across all properties, nearly $2 million over 3 years." Joseph sank back into his chair. "My God! And the residents just suffered while these people got rich." Marcus sat beside him. "That ends now. I'm implementing new oversight systems, direct reporting channels, monthly inspections. And Joseph, I want you to be part of it." Joseph looked up sharply. "Part of what?" Marcus smiled. I need someone who actually knows what's happening in my buildings. I'm creating a new position, Marcus explained. Resident advocate, someone who reports directly to me, bypassing all the layers of management, someone who can identify problems before they become crises. Joseph's eyes widened. You want me to be a resident advocate? Marcus nodded. You've been doing the job unofficially for years. I want to make it official, with real authority and the salary to match. You'd split time between Wellington Tower and my other properties, training other advocates, building a system that actually protects residents. Joseph was speechless for a moment. Mr. Wellington, I'm just a doorman. I never went to college. I don't have fancy credentials. Marcus met his eyes firmly. You have something better. You have integrity, compassion, and courage. You stood up for people when no one else would. That's the only credential I care about. Joseph's voice was thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Say yes. Help me fix this. Help me make Wellington Tower what it was supposed to be. Joseph gripped Marcus's hand firmly, tears streaming down his weathered face. Yes, absolutely yes. But Mr. Wellington, there's something you need to understand. He didn't release Marcus's hand. The residents, they've been hurt badly. Promises have been broken so many times. When you reveal who you are, some of them will be angry. They'll feel betrayed that you let things get this bad. Marcus nodded slowly. I know, and they have every right to be angry. I failed them. Joseph's expression softened. But they also need to see that you care enough to fix it, not through memos and management companies, but personally. He finally released Marcus's hand. When are you going to tell them the truth? Marcus looked at his watch. Nearly 10 o'clock. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to call a building-wide meeting. Everyone deserves to hear it directly from me. Joseph smiled slightly. That's going to be quite a shock. Leonard will probably have a heart attack. Marcus laughed despite the tension. Leonard already suspects something. He's sharper than he looks. They talked for another hour, with Joseph sharing stories and insights from years of working at Wellington Tower. He knew which residents were struggling financially, who was dealing with health issues, which families were falling apart. This wasn't just information from a logbook. This was intimate knowledge, born from genuine relationships. Mrs. Park, the one with the mold situation, Joseph said quietly. Her husband left 6 months ago. She's raising Emily alone on a graphic designer's salary. That mold problem wasn't just inconvenient, it was devastating. Marcus absorbed every detail, feeling the weight of real human lives behind the apartment numbers. The Johnsons in 1856 with the broken AC, they're both in their 70s. Last summer, Mr. Johnson ended up in the hospital with heat exhaustion because management wouldn't fix their unit. Each story was the indictment of Marcus's negligence. And Sarah Chen, Joseph continued with obvious affection. She's special. She could have just focused on her own problems, but she organized everyone. Gave them hope when they had none. Marcus left Joseph's apartment near midnight, his mind racing with plans. The subway ride back to Manhattan gave him time to think. Tomorrow would be the most important day in Wellington Tower's history since its opening. He'd be exposing his own failures publicly, something every advisor would tell him not to do. But these residents deserved the truth. They deserved accountability. When Marcus finally arrived at his penthouse apartment in a different building, he felt like a stranger in his own life. The luxury that surrounded him, the art worth millions, the view that cost a fortune, it all felt hollow. He'd been living in a bubble, while people a few miles away suffered in buildings that bore his name. Marcus spent the rest of the night preparing. He drafted a speech, revised it a dozen times, then threw it away and decided to speak from the heart. He reviewed every detail of the audit, memorizing names and apartment numbers. These weren't statistics anymore. They were people. Dawn broke over Manhattan, and Marcus stood at his window watching the city wake up. In a few hours, everything would change. His phone rang at 6:30. It was Diana Chen. Mark, or whoever you are, we need to talk before the residents start waking up. Marcus smiled at her persistence. Meet me at Wellington Tower in 30 minutes. Lobby. He arrived before Diana, once again wearing Joseph's Doorman uniform. It felt right somehow, coming full circle. When Diana walked in at 7 sharp, she stopped short. You're still wearing that uniform. You're really committed to this cover. Marcus stepped from behind the desk. Diana, There's something I need to tell you before the residents arrive. She set down her briefcase, her expression wary. All right, I'm listening. Marcus took a breath. My name isn't Mark Sullivan. It's Marcus Wellington. I'm the owner. Diana stared at him for a full 10 seconds. Then she laughed. That's a good joke, Mark. But Marcus's expression didn't change. The laughter died. You're serious. Diana's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Disbelief, shock, anger, and finally cold calculation. Prove it. Marcus pulled out his wallet and handed her his driver's license and building security card with executive clearance. She examined them, her hands trembling slightly. You're really Marcus Wellington. You've been working as a doorman in your own building. Marcus nodded. I needed to see the truth, and now I have. Diana's professional composure cracked. Do you have any idea how many protocols you violated? How many liability issues you created? How much trouble this could cause? Her voice rose with each question. I could lose my job for not recognizing you. Marcus held up a hand. You're not losing your job. You're getting promoted. You did exactly what you should have done. Suspended a corrupt manager, ordered immediate repairs, listened to residents. The fact that you didn't recognize me shows I did my disguise well. Diana paced the lobby, processing. Why? Why do this? Marcus gestured to the building around them. Because something was very wrong, and everyone I trusted was telling me it was fine. Diana stopped pacing and faced him directly. You said yesterday that 6 properties had similar issues. How bad is it really? Marcus respected her ability to cut through emotion to the core question. Bad. Systematic fraud across multiple buildings. Nearly 2 million stolen, thousands of residents neglected. Criminal charges are being filed against 8 property managers and 3 corporate executives. Diana absorbed this, her expression hardening. And my company's management? How high does it go? Marcus met her eyes. Your CEO knew. Maybe not every detail, but enough that he should have acted. He's being removed. Diana closed her eyes briefly. So the company I've worked for is corrupt at the highest levels. Marcus softened his tone. Not everyone. You proved that yesterday. So did a few others we've identified. I'm not burning down the whole company. I'm cutting out the cancer. Diana opened her eyes, and Marcus saw steel there. What do you need from me? Marcus appreciated her resilience. Stand with me when I tell the residents the truth. Help me rebuild their trust. At 8 o'clock, residents began entering the lobby, summoned by an emergency notice that had been slipped under every door. Marcus had asked for everyone to gather, promising important announcements. They came in confused clusters, professionals in business attire heading to work, retirees in casual clothes, families with children. Sarah Chen arrived with a large group from the Tenant organization, all carrying documentation as if preparing for battle. Leonard Hartman made his way slowly with his walker, accompanied by Mrs. Rodriguez. Jennifer Park held Emily's hand tightly. By 8:30, the lobby was packed with over 100 residents, with more watching from the mezzanine above. The energy was anxious, uncertain. They'd been burned before. Diana stood near the elevator, observing. Marcus remained behind the doorman's desk, still in uniform. Sarah finally pushed through the crowd. Mark, what's going on? Who called this meeting? Marcus's heart pounded. I did. Thank you all for coming. I know you're confused. His voice carried through the suddenly quiet lobby. Marcus stepped from behind the desk, positioning himself where everyone could see him. Over 100 pairs of eyes locked onto him with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. My name isn't Mark Sullivan, he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. I apologize for the deception. My real name is Marcus Wellington. I own this building. The silence lasted approximately 3 seconds before the lobby erupted. Shouts of disbelief, anger, confusion crashed over him like a wave. Sarah's face showed betrayal. Leonard looked vindicated. Mrs. Rodriguez clutched her chest dramatically. Marcus let the chaos continue for a moment, understanding they needed to react. Then he raised his hands. Please, let me explain. You deserve the truth. Gradually, the noise subsided, though the anger remained palpable. Yesterday, I came here dressed as a doorman because I needed to see what was really happening in my building. The reports I was receiving said everything was fine, but the numbers told a different story. So I came to see for myself. A man in the crowd shouted, So this was what? Some billionaire's reality TV stunt? Marcus shook his head. No. This was me finally doing what I should have done years ago, paying attention. He gestured around the lobby. When I built Wellington Tower 30 years ago, it meant everything to me. I was here every day. I knew every tenant's name. I cared about every detail. His voice grew thick with emotion. But somewhere along the way, I got distracted. I built an empire and lost sight of the foundation. I trusted the wrong people. I stopped showing up. I failed you. Leonard spoke up, his voice carrying across the quiet lobby. So what now? You've seen how bad it is. Are you here to apologize and then disappear again? Marcus met the old man's eyes. No, Leonard. I'm here to fix it, personally. Not through layers of management, not through property companies. Me. He pulled out his phone and displayed the audit results on a screen that descended from the ceiling. This is the full scope of what was happening. The screen showed names, dollar amounts, falsified reports, ignored complaints. The residents stared in stunned silence as Marcus walked them through every detail. Richard Brennan and 7 other property managers were systematically stealing from my company and neglecting you in the process. They falsified repair reports, pocketed money meant for maintenance, and actively worked to keep your complaints from reaching people who could help. He paused, letting that sink in. The total theft exceeds $1.9 million across 6 buildings, but the real cost is immeasurable. It's Mrs. Rodriguez sleeping next to a bucket catching drips. It's Emily Park's asthma attacks. It's every cold shower, every ignored phone call, every broken promise. Sarah's voice cut through the silence. Why should we believe anything will change? You're the owner. You let this happen. Marcus nodded, accepting the accusation. You're absolutely right. I let this happen. I was negligent. I was complacent. I believed people when I should have verified. And I'm sorry, but words are cheap. He gestured to Diana. Yesterday, repairs started happening immediately. That wasn't random. That was me. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. Here's what's happening, starting today. First, every resident affected by maintenance failures will receive rent credits for the time you lived with substandard conditions, not token amounts, real compensation. He displayed another screen showing calculated amounts. Second, all outstanding repairs will be completed within 2 weeks. I've hired independent contractors who report directly to me, not through property management. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Third, I'm establishing a resident advocate position, someone who works for me but answers to you. Someone who has the authority to cut through bureaucracy and fix problems immediately. He paused for effect. That person is Joseph, your doorman. The lobby erupted in applause, and Marcus saw genuine emotion on many faces. Joseph, who'd arrived minutes earlier and stood in the back, looked overwhelmed. Fourth, Marcus raised his voice over the noise. I'm implementing a direct hotline. Any resident can call me personally, not an assistant, not a manager. Me. A woman near the front raised her hand. Mr. Wellington, these all sound like good changes. But what happens in 6 months when you get bored and move on to your next project? How do we know this isn't just damage control? Marcus had expected this question. That's fair. You have no reason to trust promises. So here's what I'm doing that's permanent. He switched to another slide. I'm selling 3 of my properties and using that money to establish a resident trust fund for Wellington Tower. $20 million that can only be used for building maintenance and resident services. It'll be managed by a board that includes resident representatives. The crowd's skepticism began shifting to surprise. Additionally, I'm restructuring how all my buildings are managed. No more outsourcing to property management companies. I'm bringing everything in-house with direct oversight, and I'm moving my primary office to this building. Sarah's eyes widened. You're moving your office here? To Wellington Tower? Marcus nodded. To the 2nd floor. I'll be here every day. Leonard struggled to his feet, and the crowd quieted out of respect. Mr. Wellington, I remember when you opened this building, you had a vision. You said Wellington Tower would be more than just apartments. You said it would be a community. His voice wavered with emotion. I watched that vision die over the years. My wife and I, we stayed because we remembered what it used to be. She died still hoping you'd come back and fix things. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. I'm sorry, Leonard. I'm so sorry I wasn't here when she needed me to be. Leonard wiped his own eyes. But you're here now. That's what matters. My question is, will you stay when it gets hard? When it's not dramatic anymore? When it's just the daily work of keeping your promises? Marcus met the old man's gaze steadily. I will. You have my word. And if I fail again, you have my permission to drag me out of my office yourself. Laughter rippled through the tension, and Marcus felt the atmosphere shift slightly. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke up in her accented English. Mr. Wellington, you fixed my ceiling yesterday. For the first time in 2 months, I slept without hearing dripping. That's action, not words. She paused, then added, but I'm still mad at you. Marcus smiled sadly. You should be. I'd be mad at me too. Jennifer Park stepped forward with Emily. My daughter breathed easy last night for the first time in weeks. We stayed in a beautiful hotel that someone paid for anonymously. She looked at Marcus knowingly. That was you, wasn't it? Marcus nodded. Emily deserved a safe place to sleep. I'm just sorry it took so long. Emily tugged her mother's hand and whispered something. Jennifer smiled. Emily wants to know if you're a superhero who dresses up as a doorman. The lobby filled with warm laughter, and Marcus knelt to Emily's level. No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who made mistakes and is trying to fix them. Sarah Chen stepped forward, her laptop under her arm. She'd been silent since Marcus's revelation, and he braced for her judgment. I've been thinking about something, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yesterday, a man I thought was a doorman listened to my problems. He promised to help, and he did. He treated me like I mattered. She looked directly at Marcus. Today, I find out that man is a billionaire who owns this building, and honestly, I'm angry. I'm angry it took you dressing up as a doorman to see what we've been screaming about for months. Marcus didn't flinch from her words. You have every right to be angry, Sarah continued. But here's the thing, you didn't have to reveal who you are. You could have fixed things quietly and taken credit anonymously. Instead, you're standing here in a doorman's uniform, admitting your failures publicly. She paused. That takes courage, or stupidity. I haven't decided which. More laughter, less tense now. So here's my question. What do you need from us? Marcus stood, surprised by the question. What do I need from you? Sarah nodded. You're asking us to trust you again. That's fair, but if this is going to work, it has to be a partnership. You can't just make decisions from on high. We need a voice. Marcus felt respect for this woman deepen even further. You're absolutely right. Here's what I propose. A resident council with real authority. Monthly meetings where you can raise issues, approve major building decisions, hold me accountable. He looked around the lobby. I want representatives from every floor, from every demographic, and their recommendations won't be suggestions. They'll be binding. A man in a business suit spoke up. Mr. Wellington, I'm a corporate lawyer. That kind of resident authority is unusual. Your lawyers will tell you not to do it. Marcus smiled. My lawyers tell me not to do lots of things. This building belongs to all of you, as much as it belongs to me. You live here. You should have a say. Diana stepped forward. I'll help facilitate the council formation, make sure it has proper structure and real teeth. The meeting continued for another hour, with residents asking detailed questions about timelines, compensation, and oversight. Marcus answered each one honestly, even when the answer was, I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Gradually, the anger in the room transformed into something else. Cautious hope mixed with determination to hold him accountable. As people began to disperse, many stopped to speak with Marcus personally. Some thanked him. Others expressed continued skepticism. All of them seemed to appreciate his presence and transparency. Leonard approached with his walker, and Marcus met him halfway. You did good today, son, Leonard said quietly. But the real test comes tomorrow, and the day after that, and the month after that. Marcus nodded. I know, and I'll be here. Leonard smiled. I believe you. My wife would have liked seeing this. She always said you were a good man who'd lost his way. Looks like you're finding it again. Marcus's throat tightened. I hope so. After the last resident left, Marcus, Diana, and Joseph stood alone in the lobby. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the marble floors that had witnessed so much drama in the past 24 hours. That went better than I expected, Diana observed. They could have called for your head. Marcus loosened the doorman's tie. Some of them still might once the shock wears off. Joseph laughed. Oh, you'll definitely get angry phone calls. Mrs. Chen on the 19th floor, she's still processing. Give her a day, then expect a lecture. Marcus smiled. I'll take all the lectures they want to give me. I've earned them." He turned to Diana. "About that promotion I mentioned. I meant it. I need a director of resident services overseeing all my properties. Someone who puts people before profits." Diana raised an eyebrow. "That's a significant position. What makes you think I want it?" Marcus met her gaze. "Because yesterday, when you could have gone through the motions, you actually cared. That's rare." Diana considered this. "I'd have conditions, real authority, no interference from executives." "Done," Marcus said immediately. "In fact, I want you to clean house. Anyone in my organization who enabled this negligence, I want them gone." Diana's expression turned predatory. "That's going to upset a lot of people, some very powerful people." Marcus smiled grimly. "Good. I'm done protecting people who don't deserve it." He pulled off the doorman's jacket, folding it carefully. "This uniform taught me more about my company in one day than 10 years of board meetings." Joseph took the jacket gently. "You honor the uniform, Mr. Wellington. Not many executives would humble themselves like that." Marcus shook his head. "There's nothing humble about what I did. I should have been paying attention all along. I shouldn't have needed a disguise to see the truth." He looked around the lobby one more time. "But I see it now, and everything changes." Diana pulled out her tablet. "Speaking of changes, we need to discuss the other 5 buildings. They're going to need the same overhaul." Marcus nodded. "Set up meetings with residents at each property. I'll attend personally." Over the next week, Marcus repeated his confession at 5 other buildings. Each meeting was different, but the emotions were the same: anger, betrayal, and ultimately, cautious hope. He spent his days in work clothes, touring properties, meeting contractors, and listening to residents. His nights were filled with restructuring his entire organization. The media eventually got wind of the story, and Marcus found himself in an uncomfortable spotlight. "Billionaire goes undercover to expose corruption in own company," read the headlines. Some praised his accountability, others called it a publicity stunt. Marcus ignored both. The only opinions that mattered were those of his residents. 3 weeks after his day as a doorman, Marcus sat in his new office on the 2nd floor of Wellington Tower. It was smaller than his previous penthouse suite, but the windows looked out onto the lobby. He could see Joseph at the doorman's desk, greeting residents with genuine warmth. Sarah Chen walked through, waving at both Joseph and Marcus. Leonard Hartman sat in a lobby chair, reading a newspaper and looking content. Marcus's assistant knocked on his office door. "Mr. Wellington, the first resident council meeting starts in 10 minutes. Marcus smiled. "Thank you, Rebecca. I'll be right there." He gathered his notes and walked down the hall to the community room. The council consisted of 12 residents representing every floor and demographic group. Sarah Chen had been elected president unanimously. As Marcus entered, the council members were already seated, reviewing agendas and chatting comfortably. This was their space now, not his. "Good evening, everyone," Marcus said, taking a seat at the table, not at the head. Sarah called the meeting to order. "First item, the proposed renovation of the gym facilities. Mr. Wellington, you've presented a plan. The council has reviewed it and has some modifications." For the next hour, Marcus listened as residents debated, proposed changes, and ultimately approved a version of his plan that was better than the original. This was how it should work: partnership, not dictatorship. When the meeting ended, Sarah approached him. "You're getting better at listening," Marcus laughed. "High praise from someone who once called me out in front of 100 people." Sarah smiled. "You earned that call out, but I'll admit, you've also earned some credit back. The changes are real. People are noticing." She paused. "I'm noticing." Marcus felt warmth at her words. Over the past weeks, he and Sarah had developed a rapport based on mutual respect and shared purpose. "How's your shower?" he asked. "Still working perfectly," she replied. "Hot water, good pressure, everything a shower should be. Novel concept." They walked together toward the elevator. "I'm working on a project," Sarah said carefully. "A documentary about what happened here, about the corruption, the Tenant organization, your undercover day, and the changes since." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "A documentary?" Sarah nodded. "I think the story matters. Not just for us, but for tenants everywhere dealing with negligent landlords. But I wanted your permission first." Marcus didn't hesitate. "You have it. Tell the whole story. Don't make me look better than I deserve. 6 months after Marcus's undercover day, Wellington Tower had transformed. Every outstanding repair had been completed. The hallways gleamed. The gym had new equipment. The community room hosted regular events. But more than the physical changes, the atmosphere had shifted. Residents smiled more, trusted more, engaged more. Marcus made it a point to walk through the building daily, greeting residents by name. Some were still wary of him, and he accepted that. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly. Others had embraced his presence, like young Emily Park, who always waved enthusiastically when she saw him. One evening, Marcus joined the weekly tenant potluck in the community room. He brought Italian food from his grandmother's recipes, nervous about being judged on his cooking rather than his net worth. Mrs. Rodriguez tried his lasagna and declared it acceptable for a rich man. The room laughed, and Marcus grinned. Leonard Hartman sat beside him. "You know what the difference is now?" the old man asked. Marcus shook his head. "Now this place feels like home again." The legal proceedings against Brennan and the other corrupt property managers moved forward. Marcus attended every hearing, ensuring the victims saw he was committed to justice. The stolen money was recovered and distributed to affected residents. Several executives from the management company faced criminal charges. The industry took notice. Marcus became an unlikely advocate for tenant rights, speaking at conferences and working with legislators on stronger protections. Other building owners reached out, some defensive, others genuinely interested in improving their practices. Marcus didn't pretend to have all the answers, but he shared what he'd learned, that distance breeds negligence, that oversight without accountability is meaningless, and that residents aren't just revenue streams. They're people who deserve dignity. Diana Chen thrived in her new role, expanding the resident advocate program across all Wellington properties. Joseph trained new advocates, sharing his philosophy of genuine care and attention. The program became a model that other companies began adopting. Marcus watched his empire transform from a collection of properties into a network of communities. 1 year after his undercover experience, Marcus stood in the lobby of Wellington Tower on the anniversary of that transformative day. The residents had organized a celebration which both touched and embarrassed him. A banner hung across the lobby. 1 year of keeping promises. Sarah had installed a photo exhibition documenting the journey. Before and after shots of repairs, images from tenant meetings, photos of the resident council in action. One photo showed Marcus in his Doorman uniform from that first day, though no one had known to photograph him then. Sarah had recreated it, asking Marcus to pose in Joseph's uniform again. He'd agreed, understanding the symbolism. Joseph stood beside him now, wearing a suit befitting his new position as Director of Resident Advocacy. "Never thought I'd see the day when a billionaire would willingly wear a doorman's uniform," Joseph said with a smile. Marcus adjusted the cap. "Best decision I ever made. This uniform showed me who I needed to be." The celebration began, and residents shared stories of change. Leonard Hartman took the microphone, his voice stronger than it had been a year ago. "A year ago, this building was dying. Oh, it looked beautiful on the outside, but inside we were forgotten, ignored, exploited." He paused, letting that sink in. Then something remarkable happened. Our owner remembered that buildings aren't just steel and marble. They're people, families, lives. He looked directly at Marcus. Marcus Wellington didn't have to come here dressed as a doorman. He didn't have to expose his own failures publicly. He didn't have to change everything about how he does business. But he did. And while I'm still mad it took so long, I'm grateful it happened at all. The room applauded, and Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. So today, we celebrate not just 1 year of fixes and improvements. We celebrate 1 year of being seen, of being heard, of mattering. Leonard raised his glass. To Wellington Tower and to second chances. The crowd echoed, "To second chances." After the formal celebration ended, Marcus found himself on the building's rooftop garden, a space that had been renovated based on resident council recommendations. The garden had become a gathering place with vegetable plots tended by residents, seating areas, and a spectacular view of Manhattan. Sarah joined him at the railing. "Quite a year," she observed. Marcus nodded. "The hardest and most important of my life." Sarah smiled. "Your documentary premiered last week. The response has been overwhelming. Tenants from across the country are organizing, demanding better treatment. You've started something bigger than Wellington Tower. Marcus watched the sun set over the city he'd spent decades building in. I spent 30 years constructing an empire. It took one day in a doorman's uniform to understand what I'd really built, a structure without a soul. He turned to Sarah. Thank you for not letting me hide from that truth. Sarah met his eyes. Thank you for listening. Not every billionaire would have. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle. Down in the lobby, Marcus later found Jennifer Park and Emily. The young girl had grown noticeably in a year. Her health dramatically improved in the mold-free environment. Mr. Wellington, Emily called out, running over. Look what I drew. She held up a picture showing a building with people smiling in the windows and a figure labeled Mr. W in a doorman's uniform. Marcus knelt to admire it properly. This is wonderful, Emily. Is that me as a doorman? Emily nodded enthusiastically. Mommy told me the story. How you dressed up to help people like a superhero. Jennifer smiled apologetically. She's been obsessed with the story. Marcus shook his head. Don't apologize. Emily, can I keep this drawing? I'd like to hang it in my office. Emily's eyes went wide. Really? Marcus solemnly shook her small hand. Really? It'll remind me why I come to work every day. As Jennifer and Emily left, Marcus carefully rolled up the drawing. It would indeed go in his office, replacing an expensive abstract painting that had never meant anything to him. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, Marcus walked through the quiet building one last time. He stopped at the doorman's desk where Joseph was finishing his shift. The older man looked up with a smile. Thinking about doing another undercover stint? Marcus laughed. I don't think I could fool anyone now. My face has been in too many news articles. Joseph stood stretching. You know what I think about sometimes? What would have happened if you hadn't come that day? If you'd just believed the reports and stayed in your penthouse office? Marcus considered that dark alternate timeline. The building would have continued deteriorating. Eventually, there would have been a lawsuit, or someone would have been seriously hurt. I would have lost everything that actually matters. Joseph nodded. You would have lost your soul. Money you could always make back, but integrity once lost is hard to recover. Marcus extended his hand. Thank you, Joseph, for keeping detailed logs, for fighting when no one else would, for giving me a chance to make this right. Joseph gripped his hand firmly. Thank you for taking that chance. Marcus returned to his second-floor office, but before settling in, he opened his closet. Hanging there, carefully preserved, was the doorman's uniform from that transformative day. He touched the fabric, remembering the weight of carrying grocery bags, the ache in his feet, the shock of discovering how badly he'd failed. But he also remembered Sarah's gratitude, Leonard's wisdom, Emily's relief, and Joseph's quiet dignity. That single day had taught him more about leadership, responsibility, and humanity than decades of success. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Resident satisfaction scores just came in. Wellington Tower is now the highest-rated luxury building in Manhattan. We did it. Marcus smiled and typed back, The residents did it. We just finally started listening. He turned off his office light and looked out at the lobby one last time. Tomorrow he'd be back, walking these halls, listening to concerns, building relationships, not because he had to, but because this was where he belonged. Marcus Wellington had spent years building an empire from the top down. It took one day as a doorman to learn how to build it from the ground up, and that made all the difference.